ụlọ nsọ gị Chukwu ka anyị na-abata, bịakwute ya bịa zuru ike. Anya bịawa ịsọpụrụ gị ugbu a, bịakwute ya bịa zuru ike. Bịa o bịakwute ya, bịakwute ya, bịakwute ya bịa zuru ike. Bịa o bịakwute ya, bịa o bịakwute ya, bịakwute ya bịa zuru ike. Chukwu nna n'ụlọ gị ka anyị na-akpọ gị, bịakwute ya bịa zuru ike. Otito na-adịrị gị mgbe niile, bịakwute ya bịa zuru ike. Bịa o bịakwute ya, bịakwute ya, bịakwute ya bịa zuru ike. Bịa o bịakwute ya, bịa o bịakwute ya, bịakwute ya bịa zuru ike.
Otito niile dịrị Chineke, ọbasi dị elu, Chukwu obiọma, Chidi ebere, Olisa nwa amara, ka ụzọ anyị niile ọbụla bụrụ ihe, ka ihe ọbụla kpatara aka bụrụ sọ mma, ka ụwa niile site n'ozi ọma anyị a nweta obi aṅụrị ta mgbe niile ebighị ebi. Ọfọ ya gazie ise o. All praises to Chi the Creator, the Supreme Being, Chi the Good, Chi the Merciful, Chi magnificent with grace. Let every way of our lives be light. Let all our acts be crowned with good. May the word prosper from our ministry now and forever. So let it be. Amen.
Obasidielu kano etite niile dịrị Chineke. Dibia Yudi mama o.
Ndewo.
Mama o.
Kao imagi.
Ka noto ho. Nde niile no na hell. Everybody watching wherever you are. Mama means nothing but goodness. May your life be nothing but sunshine. That's what we want to have Chineke to surround you with today. Welcome to another episode of Chiism Live. It is I'm always happy to be here today. It's just like my it's a weekend drug, if you will, because you come to be enlightened and to be with Chineke. I'd like to thank you, Dibia Yudi, for leading us in prayer. And for everyone who is listening to me, I just want to add a little more today to ask for additional goodness to you. Today, as we embrace the gift of life, let us take a moment to reflect on how fortunate we are to witness this day, especially in memory of many who did not have this opportunity. How lucky we are. How lucky we are. It serves as a reminder that each day is a precious gift because you have it, but many others did not. You cannot take it for granted because, but for the grace of God, that could be you. So you must be grateful for the wonderful opportunity. I keep repeating that. wonderful opportunity called today, because this is an opportunity. To be here today is an opportunity. And so we should express our gratitude to the Most High for granting us this moment and the chance to experience life in all its beauty. There are many eyes that have been shut, ours are still wide open, we said. There are many ears that have been closed. There are many mouths that can't speak anymore. So it is really quite essential to acknowledge those who are grappling with what we are blessed with, those who are not fortunate, those who have illness, depression, or facing the harsh realities of life. Here we are. Is that good? We are lucky. We should be grateful. When people talk about, I don't have this, I don't have, I ask, do you have breath? Do you have breath? Are you breathing? Inhaling and exhaling. What joy that is. Ongozi Chineke. You talk about blessing. That is the blessing of Chineke. The joy of being able to speak, the joy of being able to see, being able to hear, being able to touch, being able to continue to love those who you love. We must offer other people our prayers, recognizing their struggles as we celebrate our own. Because like I said earlier, many did not see this day, and there are those who saw this day, but they are not celebrating as we are. Perhaps there are people out there scrambling to get work and can't find work. People scrambling to find food, but can't find food. But here we are. Here we are. Healthy, looking good. Got up this morning, have breakfast, drinking tea, coffee, or whatever. We cannot ignore the broader challenges faced by many around the globe, those caught in the turmoil of war. Many people died yesterday because of the turmoil of war. The devastating effects of climate change. Many people drowned because of the floods, the hurricanes, and countless other calamities. We are so fortunate. So as we revel today in our happiness, let us just remember our shared humanity. Let us remember our shared humanity and the responsibility that we have to support one another. That's an African proverb, simple as it may sound. Don't leave your brothers and sisters behind just because you made it, or just because you're fortunate. Just because you're fortunate, life is going well for you. It may not be going well for other people. And please, I do apologize if you notice that there's some challenges with the streaming today. It's not our fault, but nonetheless, we'll do the best we can to present you with enough information to add to your repertoire. In gratitude for our circumstances, let us commit to making a difference, however small, in the lives of those who are not as lucky as we are, those who are suffering. Today, please, ladies and gentlemen, let us not just celebrate our own lives, but also extend our compassion to those in need. That is what it means to be a spiritual person. Giving thanks for this opportunity and awareness that it brings. So it is indeed, with all that said, my pleasure to have Dibia Yudi today to help us. And of course, now it is so important that I'm going to bring in our guest of honor. He's a state today, the soul of African culture. You know, Africa's culture is often considered rich tapestry woven from various elements, including spirituality, community art, and oral traditions. So we're going to navigate this topic today with Dibia Chedozie Okoro. He's the Dean of African Culture at Chiist Mahandum. Let me remind you also that Dibia Yudi is the Dean of Chiist Education, Chiist University, and I am the Chancellor and also the Dean of natural theology for the university. So those who are speaking to you today, we are speaking to you as authorities in African spirituality and culture. So having said that, let me bring in Dibia Chidozie, who is going to lead the conversation today. Good morning, Dibia. How are you?
I'm good as
Hey,
usual.
what did you?
Yes,
Ciao.
Ekenemo.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah. All right.
Welcome. Well, you know, you own the floor today. So we are going to just step back and watch you talk to us about the soul of African culture. Welcome.
Yeah.
Take it away.
Okay, thank you. I salute everyone out there, those on the program watching, and those who will watch later. Well, let me start by stating that I came about this topic after the conference we went to in Germany, Bayreuth University, and there we were busy talking about the African perspective to issues of human existence. And I watched with dismay how Africans were busy talking without knowing the spirituality of their culture. And I wondered, it was a 3-day conference. First day I listened, and second day I listened, third day I listened, and everybody that talked was talking from a post-colonial point of view. And my pain is that if we are to advance African knowledge, must we limit African discourse on African knowledge to the post-colonial? Because that's exactly what the world wants us to be. They want us to operate within the post-colonial, and for instance, by the post-colonial dating, Nigeria is 64. That means we are 64 in the whole world history. We are just 64. Isn't that an affront on our spirituality, on our personality, on our history, on our culture, and our historiography? It means that we have, unwittingly or wittingly, inevitably, we have accepted the Hamitic hypothesis that our history began from the point of contact with the two basic Semitic Caucasian races. That is Arab Islamic and Christian, Caucasian Christian. And so I watched with dismay. Nobody talked about African spirituality. Nobody talked about the soul of African culture. And then we forget that the post-colonial is located within the colonial. And the foundation of the colonial is the destruction of African foundation, which is the soul of Africa. And that's what it meant, scrabble and partition. Then another problem that led me to this topic is the frequency of the frequent rate of divorce among married African couples. It is worse with African couples who migrate from African countries to European countries and the Western countries, say European, Canada, America. So you see that they get there and then it is easy for them to detach themselves, and then the men and the women, the man or the woman is regretting.
Well, we seem to be having an issue here with his connection. But as you could tell from, he's frozen, but he'll be coming back. But you know,
hello, sorry, I don't know what is happening. I don't know what is happening. The network seems bad. So those Africans who migrate from Africa to the diaspora, the marriages don't hold too long before the divorce. And those there are sending messages that it is better to bring up children here in Africa than over there in the diaspora world. But I look at the Asians, be they Arabs, Indians, Chinese, Japanese, whoever they are, they, whether back home in their country or in the diaspora, they are intact. And when I look at them, I see that they have not forgotten the soul of their culture. And they live within their spirituality, which is why they refuse to live in the midst of other people. They always live within their own community. And I begin to look at it and I say, well, how do we solve this problem? So at a point, I refused to talk, but at the point, that was second day of the conference in the evening, towards the close of a particular session. So I had to raise my hand and I had to talk, because the debate was gender, and gender was being talked about from feminist Tamagan position, as if the man and
He's frozen again.
Yeah, so I had to remind the audience that Africa has Africa has culture, and culture has soul. The soul of African culture is African spirituality, and the center of that spirituality is complementarity. Everywhere we see opposites, we do not see antagonism. What we see is complementarity. That is visible in the Igbo expression, Ibwa Indanda. That is to say, with solidarity, no load is unsurmountable for people who understand themselves. Challenges are always there. The universe is created on challenges. The author of the universe itself had to fight challenges and establish the universe on challenges. And so challenges will be there, but how we are able to cope with these challenges determine who we are, determine what makes us human beings. That's the difference between Mando and Anuman. What has no control, no coordination. Mando is what has coordination, what has control, what can self-regulate itself, just like God. That's what it is. The way Chukwu Okike can self-regulate itself, self-moderate itself, and that is visible in the entire environment. It's invisible in the entire cosmos. That is what the human being is, what can regulate itself, self-regulation, distinguish between bad and good, and find a mean between the two, and coordinate things. That's what makes us human beings. So I begin to wonder, are we still human beings when we are carried away by other people's culture? We are easily carried away by fanfare. We are easily carried away by distraction and diversions. We forget the main reason why we exist. We follow.
Right, network interruptions.
As if we understand what all these things are. I have to remind the audience that African culture is built on the soul, the soul of complementarity. And if we are to operate by the principle of complementarity, it does not talk about the positive and negative. It talks about the active and the passive. And it does not talk about equality. It talks about equity. And equity is built on the principle of respect.
Wow.
He's really having a network issue.
Yeah, we're having network issues and all that.
We're having a network issue.
Yeah.
Well, he's hopefully I'm going to bring him back once his network is a little bit improved. But I want to ask this question, because people always want to know, what is African spirituality anyway? What is it? You know, when you say African spirituality, what you're talking about? Well, it's rooted in our spiritual belief that emphasizes our connection to the ancestors. I think that you did a short video we posted in Chiism Live Facebook page, you know, and our connection to nature, honoring nature and Chineke, the divine, right? And also understanding that the rituals and ceremonies that we give to honor our ancestors is, quite frankly, we're honoring ourselves.
Yeah.
When you honor your ancestors, you honor yourself. When you honor nature, you're honoring the system, the RUC, part of the RUC that Chineke uses to bless us. Okay, let's see, he's back now. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, he'll probably keep going back and forth because he's speaking to us from Nigeria. So unfortunately, network sometimes is a problem. So I'm going to add him again so he can continue.
Yeah, so
okay,
I have to. Yeah, thanks. I had to switch over to my hotspot, but the problem, I hope nobody's going to call me, because once somebody calls, it's going to be a problem. So let me do it fast before I'm cut off again. Now, so the complementarity says two things are always there at every situation, and these two are never the same. They can never be male, male, nor female, female. They must always be male and female. We see it in the Igbo worldview. Chiist spirituality has taught that over and over. That when Chukwu Okike Abiama will manifest himself in physical reality, he did so in the forms of two energies, the female energy, Eke, and the male energy, Chi, and then the middle point is Abu. And you'll find that these, for the African, whether it is Igbo African, Yoruba African, Efik African, Kenyan African, or whichever African, typical African, these two form the irreducible foundations. So for African, as the soul of African spirituality, complementarity can never be reduced to one. It can never be reduced to the male alone nor the female alone. It's never possible. So typical of anything African, wherever you find the male, you must find the female. So that is why for us, we do not ask the question, the egg and the chick, which one came first? The two are equiprimordial. They entail each other. Where you find egg, you find chick. Wherever you find chick, you find egg. That's why for us, here in Africa, I've seen that with most African culture, when you boil an egg and eat egg, and then you say you're hungry, so, oh, after eating a whole chicken, you still hungry? Because for us, the egg signifies the chicken, and the chicken entails the egg. And so for us, it is always the two. They must mingle. And what complementarity says is that two things are primordial. And since the two things are primordial, they are incomplete. Insofar as they're incomplete, there must always be interdependence. There must always be interconnectivity. There must always be symbiosis, in the sense that one must complement the other with what the other lacks for there to be wholeness, for there to be completeness. This is not what you find in Christianity or Islam, where you see the antagonism of opposites. And that is why, if you look at Islam, it does not give you the option of this and that. It gives you the option of heaven or hell, good or bad. For us, it is not good or bad. For us, we know, like the Igbos will say, life is about give and take. Nobody will share the bad ends of life. It is about good and evil mixing. Because one event that you consider to be evil, if you look at the other end of that evil, there is a lot of good accompanying it. And I think I wrote that in one of the essays I wrote about integrative metaphysics. And a scene of accident that happen, maybe multiple accidents that involve vehicles, 40 vehicles, trailers, luxurious buses, Marco Polo buses, pleasure cars, and then maybe about some 40 deaths and 200 wounded and so on and so forth. Yes, it's bad. But for the African, without that event, other professions will not have work to do. It is out of bad news that the media feeds, because news is about what is bad, what is strange, what is new. So they say when a dog bites a man, it's not news. But when a man bites a dog, it is news because it's new. So if you look at all the things that we feed on, there are problems. Every knowledge is meant to solve a problem. That is why I say no knowledge to hang.
Yes.
Any knowledge hanging that does not solve a problem is no knowledge. Wisdom is required to direct knowledge.
Yes.
So from that one scene of accident, the media, print media, electronic media, all sorts of media, social media, all kinds of media will feed from it. Medicine, all departments of medicine will feed from it. Coffin sellers will feed from it.
Yes.
Law enforcement agencies will feed from it. Police, road safety, name them. What about the lawyers? What about the insurance brokers? What about even the churches? People will go, some will go to bury their death, they will go to church. Some will go to celebrate that they were involved in the accident, but nothing happened. Some will say, okay, it happened, but they have recovered. So if you see one incident and the ripples it has caused, it will be difficult to separate good and evil. So for us, we don't see evil as complete evil and good as complete evil. They are mixed. That is why our spirituality all rests on the tripod, not on the triad. In Christianity, it's a triad in the sense that reconciliation is the what you call symbiosis or synthesis. It's the reconciliation of the principal actor back to itself. If you come, for instance, you look at Christianity, God projected the world. The world is antagonistic to God. God detached himself from the physical universe. It is sinful. And so he sent his only begotten son. At the end of the day, his only begotten son returned back to him. So you see a thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. The synthesis is a reconciliation of God back to God. That's not what our own spirituality speaks about. What it speaks about is that from ab initio, there was God, there was Ago, and both of them walk hand in hand. In fact, Ago is the mind of God, and in Yoruba, Ago is Eshu. It is the one doing the yeoman's job for God, and that most stubborn of God's archangels, the rear of God, he gave it the most Herculean task, bringing balance in the midst of the conflicts in the world. And how does he do it? Through intrigues and mischief, by making sure that I am a teacher of philosophy, and then the three of us are teachers. You always have problem of knowledge to pay us for us to teach you. And so we will feed from it. And when we teach you, some of you are engineers, our cars will have problem. We will still take our cars to you. From the money you have paid us, we will give you some. And so everything becomes interconnected. Some of you, we are teaching our medical doctors. When we are sick, we will come to you. You won't teach us, you won't treat us free of charge. We will pay. So that's the whole thing.
Is he frozen again?
Yeah, it's just funny that he froze on. That's the whole thing, and then
everything stands alone in the universe. So sorry for that. So nothing stands alone in the universe. So when you come to human relation, what our ancestors say is that we do not create a dichotomy between male and female. That is why our ancestors deliberately created the male to represent sun rising and the female to represent sunset, setting. And they say when the sun rises, that is active. And when the sun sets, that is passive. So the women were trained to regulate the men. The role of women in African society is to regulate the men. and they regulated the men from cradle as wives, as sisters. That is why women had their own institutions. Men had their own institutions. These institutions were not parallel. So you'll find that in a typical Igbo community, the men are looking for their sisters to protect. Women are looking for their brothers to protect because they know that they need each other. The day that the man falls into trouble with Umunna, it's Umunna that will save him. The day the woman is in trouble with her female, it is her brothers that will come and fight for her. So you find this intermingling. Now, passivity does not mean inactivity. Passivity means training the female to have the patience of managing the nuisance value of the male. Because us male, we have a lot of nuisance values, whether you like it or not. So that is why the Igbo word for husband is di and edi. Then the Nkoro side, Abriba side, will say is G and edi. Then if I combine the two, so that is why a man always considers his wife, his mother. He tells her the secret. And if she say it is now because the woman has been training how to manage the man's psychology. Before, the fact is that before you even marry, from the kitchen to the fattening house, and where the woman was trained to study the psychology of the man. So the woman always knows the psychology of the man.
I think we've lost him again.
Yeah, he keeps going in and out, but this is about role playing. Everybody, how you say, know your role. And part of the problem we have in our communities is that everybody's overstepping their role. And things that people think that are strength is actually not strength. It's weakness, or it's something that is detrimental, or it's opposite. People that think that barking all the time is what your manhood, rests on. You kind of find out, no. Or maybe it's better if you listen, that you have wisdom. That's where your manhood is. When you are listening better, and you have a lot of wisdom to impart on younger folks or something like that, or being able to deal with both your friends and your enemies, being not being temperamental, being at an even keel and stuff like that. But when you're looking at I don't know if evolution is the right word for it, but obviously that's pretty much where we've ended. Where if you're a man and you show a feminine side or a side of you that says, hey, I understand the other side, then they look at you as you're weak. I mean, you look at the politics of the world right now, and how many men support women in politics. The first thing that they do, or their first reason, is something that is sexist. It's something that has to do with their ego being hurt. And so instead of looking at what that woman brings to the table, her temperament, her leadership skills, and what have you, you're looking at something else. That's probably what he's talking about, so we just got our priorities mixed up, but he makes a lot of points. And I think that African soul is that Pan-Africanism. It's almost like a word, Pan-Africanist or Pan-Africanism is like a word that people shy away from because they feel like, oh boy, it's so radical. But I don't see anybody when you talk about Greek philosophy. Pan-Africanism is a philosophy, is a way of thinking, right? And when you talk about the Greek philosophers or Chinese philosophy, you even have little books out here that talks about the philosophies of other people. But when we talk about anything African, the Africans are the ones that shy away, while others want to learn about us. So that knowing about us, is a good instrument in learning how to control us. So they want to know about us, but we don't want to know about ourselves, But Pan-Africanism, thinking that way, the idea of uniting you know, because I don't know where the DBA does is, so I don't really know how far I should go into, you know, what I'm talking about. But take it away.
Yeah, you know, hopefully he'll come back. The one of the things that Africans hold very dear is family. Part of our spirituality, quite frankly, is focused on the family. You know, we have a tendency now, you know, because Ezinulu, when you talk about Ezinulu, right? You talk about your family, but also the extended family is part of our spirituality. Now, when children, no child is ever completely trained. They're always learning. They're always learning. So we didn't in the past throw people away. And when I say, oh, get away, you're grown now, you know, you're still a very important part of the family, right? And we still continue to give you support, knowing that you have to at some point move on your own. But as we say, what do we say? That means when your hands are strong, when you're able, you don't ever get rid of a family member at a moment of weakness. We don't do that. That is not our spirituality. But we have a tendency now to count the person's akasirike based on the age, not necessarily based on their capacity. Am I making sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
I mean, you see it every day.
In the streets. Yeah, you find young people in the streets kicked out of their homes by family because, oh, they're 18. You're 18 years old. You should be on your own. But African spirituality is to help you get on your own. That's why when you look at the Chinese and the Indians here in the United States, let me just use it here in the United States, you see, they have that same mentality. They will all live in the same house until the one person has achieved enough, and then he steps out and then helps the next person. And before too long, they are all, they're all on their own and wealthy, right? But we have a tendency to count somebody's readiness based on their age, not on their capacity, which is not African in nature. You can attest to that. You know, we believe in support and social cohesion, you know, collective responsibility, strong emphasis on collective responsibility, you know. So we have relationship with family, extended kin, and the larger community as a whole, you know. So the whole concept of, oh, you're 18, now get out of the house, you're old. What we do is we're not preparing people to be successful, okay? We're not preparing people to be successful. We, quite frankly, if that person is now ready, they're going to fail. But we blame the person for failing when we did not contribute to their growth. We didn't help them because our focus is on age. That's why you have Dibia Chedozie is here. And Dibia, would you agree with me? And I'm sure you also come into that.
In fact, that was
the culture, soul of African.
Sure. That was awesome.
Go ahead.
Okay, Dibia, that was awesome. You know, you know these things even more than I do.
It's true. It's true.
Because you lived it more than I do. So exactly, that's, in fact, we can go on and on. Yeah, you can see that those, if you want to buttress what Dibia just said, you can read Things Fall Apart. When somebody, Okonkwo, or anybody wants to start life, it is for the family or the society to provide the first yam seedling that the person will plant. Land and the tools and everything will be provided for the individual. And the individual will have been prepared in the camp. In the camp, that's where you discover your profession. You are harvested from when you are small. From age of 12, you are taken to camp. By the time you're coming back from camp, you're about 16, 18. That's when you're now graduating into the guilds. Whether you want to hunt, you want to farm, whatever you want to do, you are trained along that. And then when you have acquired all of that, then the very first capital that you are going to use will be provided by the community.
Mhm.
And then you are
Yes.
guided until you stabilize, so that you now begin to help others. Even the system of training, education for us was not just formal. Education was ingrained in the culture. That is why there was this communalism starts from the stomach. Like I gave a lecture that was last month before I traveled. I gave a lecture to the Ohanese youth. And the thing I told them, I said, look, the training of the human being does not start from birth. It starts from the stomach. From when the woman is 5 months pregnant, movement of the child begins. Anything that happens within the environment in which the woman stays is encoded in the child's mind. Our parents knew that. That was why when a woman is pregnant, she's put in a serene atmosphere. She's respected. Today, some countries give their women what some kind of protection law protecting a married woman, even if they are paid salary for being pregnant. That kind of a thing existed in traditional Africa, and by the kind of environment in which the woman is put. And then I also reminded them there was a Lebanese, or I think either a Lebanese or Turkish, that was invited. The meeting was to start for 11, but you couldn't believe that the meeting, if I didn't force them, and myself and one Professor Duru, especially in anatomy, if we didn't coerce them that we were leaving, the meeting will not start until 4. It was because of us that they managed and started the meeting around 2:30 before the so-called big guys and Indians, they started coming. And then when I was given the microphone, because I said I was leaving, and so they had to beg me to stay and give it. I said, look, you are talking about youth and development. Development is about time management. So if you are going to talk about youth and development and you cannot manage time, there is no development.
True.
Then I then had to tell them that, look, of all animals, of all creatures in the world, we are the only ones with a dynamic mind. Dynamic mind, that our mind is not fixed on instincts. Our minds are above instincts. That's why we are like God. And now, because of our mind is above instinct, then we are not regimented. We are dynamic and flexible. Our minds can flow in any dimension we want to make it flow. But there's a danger here. The danger is that we are Africans and from different cultures. That does not mean that when we give birth to our children, those children automatically will learn our culture, we speak our languages. No. If we give birth to our children and we want to experiment, we leave them to exist among monkeys, they will not utter anything word from of a human being. They will not behave anything. They will have no character. Like Ndwenwe, monkeys. They will be amoral, not immoral or moral, but amoral, outside the bounds of morality, because they are not rational. So now, what is the essence of culture? Culture is where the education begins. Culture is where the taming begins. And so I asked the white man who was present, I said, you people know the secret. And he was nodding. He was clapping. I said, you were here at exactly 11. I met you here. I had to go for another meeting. So for 11, I had to be phoning them. I was on the way, running, driving like crazy. Only to get there, my ego was deflated. And I was waiting, angry. But I met the white guy there. And I asked him, do you, as a talk, or as a Lebanese, do you live in any other community outside your own community? He said, no. Do you allow your women to live in any other community when they are pregnant that does not speak your language? He said, no. Do you allow your children from when they are 5 months in the mother's belly to when they are delivered and they are 6, do you allow them to live outside your community? He said, no. Why? To culture them, to build them, to cultivate them. And so if you look at the Igbo culture, the culture itself is the education. From when the child is 5 months to when the child is 7 years, that is the stage of obedience. The child is taught obedience. Why? Because the next stage from 8 to 14 is the stage of self-denial. If you do not know how to obey, how will you learn the act of self-denial? So it is not all that children ask for that you give them. Sometimes children are meant to begin to contribute to home building from their little savings. Sometimes your mother can deliberately want to test you and say, from your piggy bank, please, we don't have onions. Get us onions. They are testing the child. The child will go and buy onions. Some children will say, mommy, don't worry. That's my contribution. Some children will insist that you must pay them back that money. All right? So from there, the parents know how to place the child. If they want to look for a child that will not allow the wealth of the family to filter out, they know who to send message. And if they want to put a child who is going to be in charge of managing the property of the family so that it will go around everybody, they know who to put there. That's how the psychology. Then from when the child is 15 to when the child is going to be 21 is the stage of self-reliance. So if you have not learned obedience, you have not learned self-denial, how would you learn self-reliance? Because self-reliance is about self-denial. You must learn how to do scale of preference, to approach things from the most important point to the less important point. Begin to deal with the most important one and pretend as if the other ones don't exist. So even when other people are wearing tight-fitted shirts and all that, you manage what you have. What you need to do is to be clean. When others are using McLean and the best toothpaste, you use your chewing stick. All you must do is to make sure your mouth does not smell. So that way you learn self-reliance. We are not doing that. And then if you look at it, the Africans say, do not do this alone. If you want to go far, don't do it alone. Do it in solidarity of others. So you find that the African society was built on the tripod of the family, the age grade, and the guild. For the family, you migrate to the age grade. To the age grade, you migrate to the guild. And you continue with the guild and the age grade and family. The three are interwoven. And the three are extended. They are extended because they are interwoven, built on checks and balances, which is why we have the adage, oku wam wam, anya wam wam nele, oku naga wam wam, anya naga wam wam nele. Then you have, as I say, anu ba jos abayo kegbe. You know, there must always be complementarity whatever we do. And that's from the basis of Ofonogu, which is the Southern Africa you call Ubuntu, the philosophy of Ubuntu. Because you are, because of we are, I am. Because I am, we are. Now, so this was a society of complementarity. It was not a society of individualism or collectivism. No, it was a complementarity of the individual and the group. The individual that make up the group, the group that protect the individual. So even as late as today, in my village, let me say, okay, that some 10 years ago, when I wanted to build in the village, and I said, well, I didn't want my older brother's trouble. Please, I want to buy land. They should help me locate land. Let me buy. When they get one, they should let me know. So I send the money. Then I said, nah, lataula. When I came home, they invited my older brother. My older brother said, no, until this, that. He said, look, we only recognize you as the older brother, the firstborn of your father. But you are not the final authority in the society, in the community. We, the elders, are the final authority. We know your father's land more than you. So we are going to give this, your younger one, land. The first land on which he must build, he must never buy. He can decide to expand it after that time. And that's there for him. So they gave me a plot of land that was like 150 meters long and 70 meters wide to build. And say, that's my own. No money, nothing. That's African culture. The very first capital that you need to start subsistence, you are provided with. So what is the long and short of all of it? If we live within our culture, we will know how to train our people. We will give the women the correct training, and the men will have the correct training. because in the camp of the women, they were taught how to manage the women, the men rather. So, how? Their psychology. It's not, does not mean that the woman is not powerful. When she comes, she sings, she looks at the man, she tells the man, oh, my hero, my emperor, and then begins to call him name. The man's head is swollen. And then the woman will say, oh, ugum, begins to call the woman's psychology. And that's how they manage themselves. So you care for this. So what is that? Respect. And what is the foundation of respect? Care. And you care for, you take interest in what each other, what to do. And that's how society is built at every point in time, bringing the hands together. That is the whole essence. That's why the human being is defined as right and left, and that both must always come together. So at every point in time, the tripod must always be an equilateral triangle in which the three sides are equal and well seated and balanced at the base. It must always meet at the apex. It must always unify. And so if you go to the Alpha divination system, everything about the African spirituality is always about how to make things better. If it is bad, how do we make it good? All right? And that's the whole essence of African culture. And the Yorubas will say that though the teeth may bite the tongue and the cheek, that they cannot do but live together. And we say, Makojo, Ayegebi. So the whole thing about marriage is nwoke na-eji nwanyị, nwoke a na-eji nwoke, and nwoke a na-eji nwanyị, nwanyị na-eji nwoke. So and that's why, if you remember, on this particular program, we preached on ndidi, patience, as the highest of the virtue in African culture. The man must be patient, the woman must be patient. It is through patience that you understand each other and that you can now begin to rub minds together, hold things in common, manage yourself, and manage the home. And that's why our ancestors used the finger as a symbol of equity, not equality. The fingers are never equal, but by equity, they complement each other. They complement one another. And no finger is more important than the other. So that's why our ancestors used the human finger, 5 fingers, to preach the doctrine of equity. And what the doctrine of equity states is that know your function, perform your function without grudge. In the Chinese Taoism, they said, Confucian Taoism, they say, in the home, there is Tao of the father. Father, perform your role as father. There is Tao of womanhood. Woman, perform your role as woman. There is Tao of husbandhood. Perform your role as husband. There is Tao of wife. Perform your role as wife. There is Tao of sonhood, daughterhood. Tao of governance. Tao of everything has Tao. The Tao of everything is the rules. That is very close to African culture. Learn your role, your function in the society, in the home. Perform it. Do not claim rights. Rather than claim rights, perform your duties. When you perform your duties, your rights will be granted to you. But today, Africans are carried away by the Tamagan culture of America, and we forget the history of America, that when the place you are living is, they call it the apex of European culture, and they say it's the land of freedom. What is this land of freedom? Those who were not satisfied with the laws in European countries, and so they were exported to America. And they got to America, they built the kind of society they want for themselves. We need to educate ourselves about all this so that when we get to live in a particular community or a people, we will know how to live within those people and still maintain our sanity. because it does not tell well of us and our culture that other people from Asia, they get, you see the Indian couple, one car, and they manage themselves without quarrel. But our own, with 2 cars or multiple cars or fleet of cars, we quarrel. We quarrel over who is going to buy the fuel, who will pay the mechanic, who will do this. You see the Indian couple, so meticulous. The man leaves the car for the wife. The wife will go and drop the man in the workplace. Then she knows when they will close. She will quietly go and pick the man. They go home for shopping together. They don't say when they get home, you are the wife, you are the one that's going to cook. They live in harmony. They know that times are changing, so they update their culture, because in the first instance, they live within their culture. So they grow within their culture. So they are improving their culture. But our problem is a problem of people who have been dislodged from their culture. So we are not living within our culture. We are living mentally. We are projecting into our culture. It is not inside us. So that's the bane we are facing. And that's why we must try as much as possible to get down with our spirituality and our culture so that we will manage our homes perfectly. And if we do that, we'll be able to call the bluff of the conspiracy against the black family in European countries and the Americas. Because there's a conspiracy against the black family to always make sure that the black family doesn't get it right. And there's always this tendency of trying to promote the lady over the man. And once that happens, and you run society on the basis of equality, trouble, the family rather, you run the family on the basis of equality, trouble will ensue. But if you define it on the basis of complementarity, then the man will just tell the wife, oh, my wife, don't mind those people. Let them make you manager, and let them make you director. Let me be manager. Is it not to the same home? Bring the money home. Let's manage and then the woman, yes, will say, my husband, let's build our family. Then you carry your salary and build other businesses. That's what the Asian people do. Asian couple most of them don't care about who earns. When they come home, they bring the resources together. They know where to assign it. Is it not the same civilization? But we must be careful. If not, after this century, if we do not do anything about our spirituality and our culture, any African living will just be a black skin but a white white mask. We will all be European. Yes. No coordination. So that's the reason why I decided to talk about the soul of African culture.
That is fantastic. Wonderful, wonderful. I want to say this and then I'll go to Dibia Yudi. In speaking about family as well, there are some African countries where when a man marries a woman, right, for 4 years, she doesn't cook. She doesn't do anything. He serves her, or a sister or a mother or somebody like that serves her, teaching her the ways of that family, because family is so important. So they don't make any mistakes. It's not, okay, I married you. No, you come in here and start cooking and cleaning. No. They actually welcome the wife to the home, and they let her know how important she is. They serve her. I was reading, I wish I had brought that article, where they actually serve her and let her take her time and learn the ways of the family. Before now, she's expected to start doing what she has learned. The man doesn't say, oh, you're a woman, serve me. You're this. No. Now you have become part of this family. You're very important to this family. You're going to be the mother of the children. You're going to train the children. But we want to welcome you and teach you what you need to know. And then after that, that's when any expectations is placed on her. while she's learning and still going about her life, just living. Now, I'm not saying after 4 years now she loses her, her individuality and all of that. No, that's not the point. But now she knows about the family she has married into and continues that effort to build up that family, to make that family strong. What we have done now is we have the big wedding, the big whatever, then we have the honeymoon. After the honeymoon, that's it. In some families, not all of them, thank you, Chineke. In some families, once she's gotten into the house, then it's time, start cooking, start cleaning, the man doesn't do anything anymore. That does not make the family strong. And that's why sometimes women get tired and they leave. Because when they marry some of these men, they don't even know what to expect. They didn't know this man can, when he was courting her, he could cook, he could do all of that. But all of a sudden, he can't do anything. That doesn't make the family strong. So African culture and African spirituality, you're supposed to strengthen the family through your actions. What you do to the man, what you do to the woman, what you do for the children, all of that is important and makes the family strong. And like Dibia Chiist said, it is imperative that we prepare any child that's leaving the home space for living outside of it. Too many, I can't tell you, you will attest to this. You go and see these children in the parks, 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds. They have nowhere to stay because mom and dad kicked them out. They're too old to be in the house. They haven't learned anything. They don't know where to go. So they are stranded in the streets. Some of them go into drugs. Some of them die or killed. So if they're girls, some of them are raped. Even some of the men are raped, So we as African people need to rethink African culture, which incorporates strong family structures. And strong family structures means helping everybody thrive. Everybody thrive. When people thrive, when the family is strong, then you can say, okay, well, we raised it, we taught you this, we taught you that, we're giving you this. Now it's time for you to move on. But if you have not provided an opportunity for that person to learn how to survive outside of the home, you have a lot of depressed youth, a lot of depressed everyone. Oh, one more thing, I'm sorry, then you take it over to you. The family is strong also because we do not put our parents in home. The aging parents continue to be a part of the family. Their roles change. They become those who dish out wisdom, but they are still encouraged to be within the home. But now you have a lot of depressed elders. They are all pushed in the home. Some of these elders, they don't know where the family is. Nobody visits them. They're treated like they're not part of the family anymore. You see, so to make a long story short, thank you, Dibia Chiist, for that lecture. But it is important that I'm hoping that people are picking up some of what we said today and actually actualize it, make it a reality, use it, practice it. If you have a sibling or a son or a daughter who's struggling, don't assume they're no use. Don't assume they're no good. You kill their spirit by telling them, oh, you're old enough, get out, and they're not prepared. That is not our position. Eugene, you take it away.
It's kind of hard to follow the both of you because Dibia Chiist just went into it and just put it on the table, and with no apologies and straight to the point, and sometimes people tell you, we just need you to tell us the truth, but then you find out that people, for the most part, can't handle the truth. And then you too, okay, Dibia, your summation of what Dibia Chiist was talking about is right on point. This whole thing comes down to the core of the soul of the African, which is communalism, right? The society comes before the individual. And as Dibia Chiist had talked about, and you had also alluded to it, is the idea that we're responsible for bringing everybody along from, when you're a kid to when you're 7. You have each age group with different responsibilities and expectations, which is a core part of African spirituality and traditions. All human systems come from religion, right? Spirituality. That's the first thing before your judicial systems and your social systems and political systems and military and all that stuff. All human systems are products of religion. Unity is the core. Everything that we want to do is to achieve unity. And it is by achieving unity, that's the way that we build up our community when we are united. And when you talk about unity, which is part of our Pan-African way of thinking, umoja, you have to look at it from a macro and micro perspective. How did we get here? What were we doing before the European and the Arab came to our shores to re-socialize us? Spiritually first, change your religion, because they understood that all human systems are products of religion. So change their religion once they start to justify their worth by standards that are not primordially theirs. We have them. Whatever we find ourselves today, our minds put it there. Okay, Dibe, you always say that. But unity has to be achieved from first the micro level, where Dibe Chiist talked about the family, our roles individually, the role of the daughter, the role of the son, the role of the husband, the role of the wife. We all have roles. Every culture is separated by roles. This is just not an African thing. In Europe, same thing. In Japan, the same thing. In China, the same thing. We can't look at what we are and what we try to do as Africans as something that is totally different from what everybody else is doing, trying to be who they are. So trying to be African is just trying to be Indian for the Indian. It's trying to be Chinese for the Chinese and Japanese for the Japanese. It's the same thing. When we talk about Greek philosophers, we talk about Chinese philosophy, Japanese, Hindu philosophy, Buddhism, all that. We have African spiritual philosophies too. We have a Chiism, which is just another rendition of African spirituality, Urumilarism. We have that too. They're all different renditions, but they have commonalities. And one of them is there's only one creator with a male and female spiritual perspective attached to that name of the creator. It's just not a man thing. It's just not a woman thing. You have to talk about it from a micro, talk about our roles. Then you can now talk about our roles in the family, where the family is not united because we understand what our roles are, and the family is part of the village, part of the community. So if the family is united and we understand our roles, then it's easy to unite the community because we all understand what our roles are and our responsibilities both to our nucleus family and to the community that we belong. It's all part of that Pan-African way of thinking. Nothing wrong with saying Pan-Africanism. The idea behind it is to unite people of African descent, of African ancestry, and eliminate this colonial way of thinking and white supremacy from the African mind and from Africa. It's based on the idea that people of African descent share common interests and should be unified. That is the soul of the African, to be unified. Because let's be honest, when a European or an Arab or whoever, Chinese, sees me, they don't just see an Igbo person or a Nigerian. They see a black person. They see an African. If you're from Ghana, that's what they see. If you're an African American, they see a black person, an African. If you're Jamaican, that's what they see. If you're from Haiti, they see a black person, an African. Nobody's running around here asking you before I discriminate or before I, exhibit my racist way of thinking, of looking at you, what part of the African community do you belong? Oh, you're African American. Oh, well, I'm not talking about you. No, that doesn't happen. Oh, you're from Ghana? Oh, well, you're the good black person. Nobody cares. You're just a black person, an African, and that discrimination will come to you. That racism will be just, poured upon you regardless of which African community you belong. So unity is part of that African way of thinking. It's part of your Africanness, which is no different from anybody trying to be anything else that they are from whatever community they belong to. You're doing the same thing. You're appreciating your way of life, your culture, your traditions, that building block that you need from the nucleus family into your responsibility to your community. The idea that we're our brother and our sister's keepers. The idea that nobody gets out into the community without all of us having a hand in their success, in helping everybody along. A rising tide lifts all boats. Little drops of water make a mighty ocean. It is our responsibility. It is that idea that we are responsible for the opulence, for the upward mobility, for the growth of our communities. We're responsible for it. Nobody else is. I don't expect the European or the Arab or the Chinese or anybody else to care about us. We have to love one another. Love is the highest religion. That is African spirituality. That is African religion. That is Pan-African way of thinking. That is the Africanness way of doing things. We have to see ourselves as one, not as Jamaican, not as Ghanaians, not as this, not as that, not as African Americans, because we suffer the same prejudices. So if we ever want to overcome, we have to really understand that unity is the core of the African way of thinking.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. The other aspects of our African culture that I want you all to touch on is oral tradition. Oral tradition. I don't know what they call it in your village. We call it telling stories. That's how we learn. That's how we learn about our past, about our culture. But unfortunately, these days, now think about it. They used to tell us the stories of Mbediogo, using African storytelling to teach, right? Now, what do we teach our children? Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water, right? Or we tell Hansel and Gretel. All those, things that are foreign to our children, but when we do sit to tell them a story, we're telling them the story of a Jack and the Beanstalk. Okay, those kinds of things that are, and there's nothing wrong with those stories. Okay, but remember that stories are supposed to teach something. And if you want to teach children about who they are, teach it with what they are familiar with, or at least with what they should be familiar with. That's why we have some of those really important African stories. These days, they're literally never being used. The more affluent, if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. The more affluent the African family, the less the children know about Africa. Am I right or wrong?
It's true. It's all a concern of their.
It's true. Yes. The more affluent the family is, the more Eurocentric they are, the more European history they know, and as they climb higher and higher in their financial status, the children, unfortunately, know less and less about who they are. they are taught to assimilate and abandon. So what we do when we acquire wealth is we teach abandonment and resentment. So our children are taught to resent who they are. Now, not all families, there's a caveat there. Let's be honest, not all families, but a lot of families do that, which is so detrimental to the African culture because we don't really preserve it. We do everything we can do to detach from it. I have an African-American gentleman. I was watching a podcast, and an African-American woman was talking about the fact that she's African, how her grandfather told her about Africa and all of that. And this gentleman corrected her and said, that's foolish talk. You are an American. Understand that. You have nothing to do with Africa. We are Americans and all of that. Yes, that is your condition of the moment. This is where you are now. But whether you like it or not, your history dates back to Africa. That's just the way it is. That's history. And we need to teach these histories so that they stop being ashamed of it. There are, quite frankly, a lot of African Americans who are ashamed to be associated with Africa because tragically, their concept, their knowledge about Africa, what they are taught, is certainly not coming from our own people. It's coming from historical misrepresentation of African history, which focuses on slavery. For a lot of them, African history started with slavery. They're associated with that.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? Or that, Africans didn't want you and they threw you away and all that sort of thing. Well, quite frankly, the people that were taken from Africa were not the weak Africans. Let's be clear on that.
Yeah.
Because that journey required that you have what, Yudi? Stamina. You're strong.
Stamina. A whole lot of it.
They need to know that. And they need to know about the world that their ancestors left behind. They were not jungle bunnies, as some people are eager to say. We were kings, we were queens, we were warriors, we were sacred human beings before slavery even came into being. Humanity and civilization began in Africa. That's your place of heritage. Your ancestry started there. But we're not teaching those things. And then it gets worse for the African child because she's separated completely from their African way of life. Because nobody thinks that it's something to be proud of. So the more Eurocentric we can teach our children to be, the much better we feel. I was in Umahia. Umahia, for those of you who don't know, is the city in Abia State. And we went to this brand new mall that was created, really lovely mall. Okay, I don't remember the name. And this woman, this precious child was so beautifully dressed in African attire. So that drew my attention. And I said, oh, how lovely she is. But I said it in Igbo. I said, hello, what's your name? And she said, she jumped in and told me, oh, no, he doesn't speak Igbo. So I said, oh, is he Igbo? Oh, Igbo. Yes, ma'am, but on our Igbo. He doesn't know how. Go on, Igbo. Are you Igbo? Yes. Is the father Igbo? Yes. Yeah, what the heck, he can't speak Igbo? In my only general school. Hear me, Dibia Chedozie. Did you hear what I just said?
Oh,
he doesn't speak Igbo, he said, because he goes to school.
Because she goes to school.
Because he goes to school. Yes, because he goes to school, he doesn't speak Igbo. Can you imagine that?
Yeah,
but that's what
I was just so outdone. I had to pause for a minute. I said, say that again to me. That's what they do. That's what they do to the children. They don't teach them the language because they're ashamed of it. But if we spend more time teaching our children their culture, we become a bigger and better culture. We develop better communication with Chineke, develop better communication with our elders, with our ancestors, all of that. So what are your thoughts about oral tradition?
Well, the
Your
thing,
thoughts on that? And then you did
yeah. Oral tradition has many foundations. Akụkọ Iho or Ifo, that's folklores, are part of it. And every part of African culture is mostly anchored on oral tradition. Well, and it forms part of the central discourse in African philosophy. And we treat it as one of the most fundamental problems of African philosophy, that there is no written culture. And one of the arguments against the existence of African philosophy is that Africa does not have written culture. That to philosophize, you need to write. That you cannot do philosophy through oral tradition. And a lot of arguments have gone in to debunk that Eurocentric argument. An argument is that thought precedes language, and thought is meant, and language is a vehicle for thought. So thinking is done in language, and language is done in thinking. Both of them are pari passu. Yes, we admit that oral tradition has its limitations. The limitation is that when I say something and it is not documented in any means, that in has gone with the wind. The next person that will say it will have to try to recapture what I said, the way I said it. But if what I say now, or what we say now on this program, as is being documented, is documented, every program is documented. So beyond just writing, there's a video which documents us talking and everything we say. Then reference can be made to that from time to time. Now, so but that is that argument against oral tradition. Those who teach African philosophy see it as a limitation because they are approaching the matter of oral tradition from the Eurocentric perspective. If they are initiates of institutions within their various cultures, that problem will not arise, because everywhere in our traditional society, our forebears wrote. They wrote through the proverbs, they wrote through the folklores, they wrote through Alpha divination, they wrote through the cultural institutions and the symbols they left behind. And that's what I and some other DBS here in Lagos at the Center for Metaphysical Study, we call that solid state philosophy. And the only way to understand these things is to be an initiate of the institutions within our various cultures. Then we will come to understand that Alpha is a form of writing. We've come to understand Nsibidi, and that Nsibidi is derived from our observations of happenings, interminglings, entanglements between human beings and the environment, animals, plants. That's how Nsibidi was derived. And so it becomes the human way of imaging what transpired in the environment, and over time it became a way of writing, a way of speaking. And so the first thing that colonization did was to dismantle the foundations of African spirituality. I think a friend of mine, Dibia Ojim Kalo, he told of a story that when the white man first visited Mkpuru, Abreba, and that axis, they met Nsibidi as a method of writing being taught, and those who taught Nsibidi were women. And the first thing they did was to disallow that, because they knew that writing helped to document thought as it's manifested at that moment. So each time we write, writing helps us to document thought and capture it the way it is that moment, so that the next person can come and argue on it. But with oral tradition, we will always be forced to go and recapture what the elder said. Now, how has this affected us as Africans today? It has affected us in the sense that colonization came and swept our cultures and everything about us underground, and then began to train the new intelligentsias in the missionary schools, who now have taken over the day-to-day activities, so that the European way of life, the European thought system, has become that which we operate in. And after we gathered the so-called independence, we have not done anything worthwhile to address that problem. Worse still, we left education in the hands of the colonial agents, the missionaries, Christians and Muslims. We've left education in their hands. So what happens is that our culture, and particularly oral tradition, becomes what we call just what in the Igbo are called mezi, what Yorubas will call fisi, jara. So you can imagine, like in the whole of philosophy department, with all the courses we teach, but if you do a 4-year course, you will have done 128 units. If you divide 128 units by 2, you'll be getting something close to 64 courses. Out of these 64 courses, you might not have done up to 16 courses in African philosophy. And that's one. Two, when you are to do these 16 courses are not taught in our culture, they are taught in English or French or Spanish or Portuguese. That's number two disadvantage. Then they are, insofar as they are taught in foreign language, it means that we are using foreign lenses to look at our own culture. So the bane of oral tradition today is that it is being taught and looked at from a westernized purview. And insofar as it is being taught and looked at from a westernized purview, well, then it is being looked down on as not being a powerful instrument of education. And so the problem today is that colonization, colonial education, what I call colonial missionary education, has created a dichotomy between the so-called lettered, because that's exactly what we are doing in our contemporary schools, between the so-called lettered in the European thought system, and the unlettered. And so the lettered means you have to go to school, and from day one, you start losing yourself. Like you said, Jack and Jane went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. London Bridge is falling down. My dear lady, Pussycat went to London to see the
the way he's reading it, you can just see the pain.
Yeah, so because all these Jack and Jane stories, Pussycat poems, and Tickle Little Star poems are written, because they are written, and going to them to learn them, before you begin to learn Jack and Jane anyway, you must have been taught A, B, C, D. And if you are to be taught the Igbo version, you'll be taught A, B, C, D. But we know that
little stars, man. Twinkle, little stars.
And so on and so forth. But we know that Adbichid is not Igbo. Adbichid is adumbration. What is Igbo? is Afa. What is Igbo? Is in CBD.
Yeah.
What is in Igbo is images, writings in images, folklores, proverbs, even carvings. You know, even our building of the homes and the way we build a family, all will tell stories. So until we go back to our solid state philosophies, and one of the criteria of solid state philosophy is that you must go back to your culture. Not only go back to your culture, you must not be a stranger within your culture. You must get into one of the institutions of your culture, Alpha institution, Amadioha institution, Opozo institution, and you don't just get there. You get into the one that your family is conversant with. If it is no longer there, revive it. Sit down with the elders, learn with them. Over time, the spirit will percolate in you, and then you begin to see the symbols everywhere. Then you begin to decode the symbols. And when you are decoding the symbols, you now begin to understand the philosophy, the spirituality of the oral tradition in the proverbs, in the folklores, in the marriage institutions, in the family, in the 8th grade, and everywhere you begin to see the thought system behind the oral tradition. Then you begin the documentation. And so our problem today is that the greatest problem, like I keep saying, that is why I said I will say this and then I round up on this. Until we dismantle existing colonial created states in Africa into confederations, we will not move.
Yes.
And the earlier we did that, the better for us. Yes. We must do what the Europeans have done.
Yes.
In Britain is a confederation.
Yes.
The Scots don't speak English.
Mm-hmm.
The Irish don't speak Scots. And the Welsh don't speak Irish. Each one speaks his own language. If you go to Switzerland, you have Germans, you have Italians, you have the Swiss, each one of the 6 ethnic languages, and there are 6 cantons. If you go to France, the part of France that borders Germany, there are Germans who were gerrymandered into France after the Second World War to punish Germany. Till today and till tomorrow, over their dead body, will they speak French? They do everything in German, defiantly. The way they communicate with the German, only they know. And so that is why one of the things I want to suggest in my inaugural is that the foundation of solid state philosophy, there is no Nigerian philosophy. Let's stop pretending. What you have is Igbo philosophy, Yoruba philosophy, and so on and so forth. And the foundation of this philosophy is the culture. The foundation of this culture is the spirituality. So go back to your spirituality. Yes. Let every African intellectual go back to his or her own spirituality. As you are going back, take your woman along. And that's the challenge I gave to my woman. I said, look, you and I are still living in Lagos. Before I am 65, I am going to relocate deliberately to the southeast. I want to relocate deliberately to the southeast. I am not going to live outside my village. This is why you are telling me you are going to live in Owerri. If you live in Owerri, if you come home, you meet a small wife, because I'll be entitled to that because you gave the room. Because I cannot live in the village and then I'm performing the village function and I have no wife. I cannot come on. I say no, when you're on abroad, I cannot come on. So for me, I want to, the mistake in my life, I want to correct it, begin to correct it in the life of my grandchildren, because even my children don't have that opportunity. I want to live in my village, and in my compound, I'll have a school. All we do in that place is the culture of my people. And when we do that, then my grandchildren will have the opportunity when they come home, everything about the culture, they will learn it. Then from the culture of my people, they now begin to learn the culture of the Igbo people around them. For the culture of the Igbo people around them, begin to learn the culture of other people around them. That's how knowledge develops dialectically. No location, mama, apuishi. So to round off, the argument against oral tradition is that you cannot do African philosophy, in which case you cannot do African spirituality, like Cardinal Arinze argued. I think it's Arinze, I don't know which of the cardinals, said that there is no African theology, there is no Igbo theology because there is no African philosophy. For you to have a theology, there must be a philosophy. And for you to have a philosophy, you must have a thought system. And for you to have a thought system, you must be rational. So the argument against oral tradition is that you cannot do rigorous thinking in oral tradition. Now, that argument has its plus and minus. The thing there is the challenge is left for us of scholars of today to go back to the soul of our cultures and then begin to learn the soul of the oral tradition, because even letters have their soul. We must know the soul of the oral tradition, the law of the oral tradition, and the soul of the law of the oral tradition. Once we are able to master this, it is us that will now transmit it to succeeding generations. And with that, the argument that you cannot do African philosophy or do African spirituality or African thinking in African language will be, the myth will be demystified.
Yes.
Why is it so? Because, like I said, there is no Nigerian philosophy. What you have is Igbo philosophy. Until Igbos begin to think in their own language and philosophy, there will be no Igbo thought system. That is why you live in Igbo land, but your child cannot speak Igbo, because you have been alienated even right there in your Igbo land, because you are living in the colonial enclave called Nigeria, Ghana, Cameroon. These are colonial enclaves. And insofar we operate within this colonial
that's what they are.
we will not be able to deal with the problem of oral tradition, making oral tradition to become written and to go beyond it and live within our culture, propagate things in our culture. In sum, for us to decolonize, we have to debalkanize. To debalkanize means we have to destructure the existing nations given to us by the white people, handed over to us by white people, into confederations. And then find a way, launch a satellite for language communication to the orbit. Everybody's genre, language genre, will be in that orbit. So that if we're in the House of Assembly, we will use interpreters. You fix it to the ear. I speak my Igbo. You can hear it in your Ijo. It is possible. If we think towards that way, we can use technology for all of that. And over time, the language will become interfused. Before the third to fifth generation, new languages will evolve that will be harmonized. That's the way to go about it. And then oral tradition will become solidified into written culture, become part and parcel of us again.
Thank you very much. Let us remember when we talk about written, okay, if you're writing in English, right, okay, that's really not African, all right? You're translating African philosophy into English words, okay? When you think about proverbs, we use a lot of proverbs. That's a proverb. Right? That's a proverb. But you can expand on that proverb with your story. Now, when you write it, unless you want to, if you want to write it in Igbo, it's simply as you said, okay? But if you want to write it in English, it's obviously English language. But it doesn't mean, it doesn't diminish the content behind that proverb, all right? Because that I can expand on that for 3 pages. Do you understand what I'm saying? So oral tradition is very impactful, it's very important. If you have to write it down, we have 2 options. Either write it in English or we write it in Isimbiri. And if you're a different African country, write it in your own language, whatever that may be. Okay, your way of writing. Then let me remind you that, you know, the coral, what are those coral shells? Right? That was language. If you threw it on the floor, depending on where each coral landed, that determines the thought. All right? So there were ways that we communicated. It wasn't always written, but it doesn't make it less important. The important thing is the people who are communicating, are they understanding each other? Right? You can certainly write it down, but just remember, you can pass it. That's why they say you pass the oral history. It's just as impactful. To me, it's very impactful because of even the inflection when an elder is telling you a story, the inflection in their voice, you know, tells you, is it time for you to be scared in this story? Is it time for you to be elated? Is it time for you to, do you understand what I'm saying? It's very impactful. When you look at children sitting around the feet of an elder listening to a story, no written work can tell you how those kids feel, what they're understanding, how they're embracing and understanding what's being told them. All right. So when they tell us that oral history is not as important, that's a lie. Yes, the idea obviously of written work is so that other people can read certain thoughts, somebody's thoughts in the past, and you know it carries over. But at the moment that is happening, I think that we've lost a lot right now by not sharing oral history, oral stories, proverbs. You know, all those kinds of things. You can break those proverbs into many, many, many pages. Do you understand? So, and that's what the elders do. They tell you a proverb, is that not true? Then they expand on it. They can talk and I know my father. That's the power, so can't you say, of the spoken word. When my father speaks, my father spoke with proverbs, in proverbs. He will lay so many of them, and then he will expand it. And you are so excited to hear the inflection of his word, the expressions on his face, and the movements of the body. All of that is part of you learning. You see, these days, obviously, when you write it, when it's a paper, you don't quite get all of that, but you read it because you grasp certain information, obviously. However, some of those human aspects of storytelling is lost in the pages of a book. Do you understand what I'm saying? The elders telling you that story is so impactful because they just expand those proverbs. And they tell you, within those proverbs, they tell you stories of the past, and they revert it back to that proverb, and you learn. So that's part of our culture, and we cannot lose that. And if you want to use books to teach your children how to read, how to understand African history, make sure you're reading to them a book that actually tells them about who they are, if that is what you want to do. If you want them to learn how to, if you want them to read and all of that, make sure you're using a book that's relevant to their experience, to their people, to their culture. I think it's awful, quite frankly, and I don't care who he is today. I think it's an awful way to teach a child how to understand reading or whatever by telling them stories about London bridges falling down. What is that? Well, that's a story of, well, actually, it is the London Bridge is falling down is a story about London Bridge falling down. No, or all the other examples you gave. But the bottom line is, oral history is very impactful because it includes inflections of the voice, it includes gestures, it includes eye contact. So it stirs up even while you're hearing a story. You yourself, you're imagining the story that your elders are telling you, the stories that they lived through. You start to experience it through the way they teach it. Now, does it substitute for written work? That's not the point I'm making. I'm just saying it's an impactful way of teaching African culture, African history. If you have it, if you read the book and you have children, don't put the book in front of the child. If you have read it yourself and you understand the meat of the book, or meat of the story, teach that child through your voice, through your experience, through your gestures. All of that is so powerful. I think. What do you think? Would you concur?
Absolutely. I'm just in here listening to both of you, and you just kind of come to this conclusion that I don't really know how to put it. This thing about when you say oral tradition, there's this boogeyman thing about it. You know, how people look at oral traditions as if it's indigenous to just African people, almost. You know, question is, first of all, oral tradition is a way of passing down knowledge, you know, culture, ideas through speeches, songs, from one generation to the other, you know, historical knowledge, chants, folklore, legends, mythology, nursery, rhymes, poetry, proverbs, riddles, songs, ballads, all kinds of information from one generation to another. Something that every culture and community since the dawn of civilization have always done. And written history has never existed without oral history. All right?
There you go.
So when you talk about that oral traditions, let's not talk about it as if, you know, oral tradition existed separately, and then the history, you know, written history came in, and it's been that way. They've always existed.
Yeah.
Problem with us is we've been resocialized into thinking that what we were doing, which is the same thing that the colonizer and the enslaver is doing, that somehow what we're doing is different or inferior to what they're doing, when the truth of the matter is we're all still trying to accomplish the same thing, just translated differently.
That's right.
But there's nothing that we were doing before they came that was different in terms of what you want to accomplish than what they were bringing to you. If they brought religion to you, you had religion. You had spirituality. You had your own technology. You had your own sciences. And you had your own way of writing. We were just resocialized, and we were not allowed to take a rightful place in the universe. We just were not allowed to evolve like everybody else. What is writing? Written history. Writing is just learning symbols that represent inflections. Writings, the Arabian writing are symbols. Chinese writing is symbols. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H are symbols. In CBD, they are symbols. A lot of times, writing is specialized. In Europe, you have scrolls. They were the ones that were, you know, assigned by the king or whoever to, you know, write things down and create all these scripts and all that kind of stuff. Not everybody could do it. Not even some kings could read. Those scribes were the ones that were responsible for stuff like that. In African culture, as a Dibia, when you leave your parents' home and give in a you know, rites of passage, and in that rites of passage, you learn skills. Somewhere along the line, one of the skills that you may land on, if you decided to go into traditional medicine, was to learn how to write some of those scripts that contained some medicinal and spiritual values assigned to them. Sometimes you are specialized, just like in Europe, they were specialized. Not everybody knew how to write in Chinese when they started. And then it became an exercise that to be educated, you have to learn how to write in Chinese. You have to learn to interpret Chinese history and Chinese traditions in Chinese language, because it is the culture that precipitated that system of writing. Same thing with writing in Japanese language,
Yes.
in Hindu, in German, in whatever. We have the same thing. We had incivity, but the institutions of colonization made sure that these symbols were destroyed. They were not taught in schools. We didn't evolve like everybody else. We took the chains off, but we forgot to take it off up here. If we had evolved up here to maintain the same continuity that all the cultures that were colonized maintained, like China and India, we would have been a long way ahead of where we are now in understanding ourselves. And the difference between oral and written history and how they complement one another, because neither one of them has ever existed independently of the other.
That's right.
It's oral before it's written anyway. And written history freezes information at a particular point in time, and that information remains that way until it is revised, until new discoveries prompts the update of that information. And when it's updated orally, it's updated, when you write it down. It's the same thing. You update it. Then you teach it. And like you said, Dibia, sometimes when you're talking about oral history, the way you pronounce words, the way the story is told, that same story, when it's written down and read to you, doesn't quite read the same way as if you were just telling that story. And you're bringing all the emotions into it. And it's so repetitive that when we were growing up, we were listening to some of these stories, we didn't need to go pick up a book to do it. That's how easy it is to transmit oral history without having to just go, start looking for a book. It's right there for everybody. It's the most easily accessible form of information transmission. Written history requires specialization, learning those symbols so that you could have those inflections and everything else to transmit that oral information into written form. They go hand in hand. There's no divorce here. So let's just understand it. Oral and written history is like Chiist, aka male and female, good and evil. Without good, you can't know evil. Without evil, you can't know good. They complement one another. Evil is a bad thing when it happens to you, but it's a necessary part of existence because it teaches you a lot about good and vice versa. Good teaches you a lot about evil, and you just got to pick sides. So that's my,
that's right.
What I feel about
this. Yes. Thank you. I want to add this part, and then I'll take a minute and just read some of the comments we've gotten from our audience. I just want to remind everyone that the most critical and most important aspect of African culture is our relationship with nature. Our relationship with nature. And if you want to practice African spirituality, culture is dynamic. Yes, we're all exposed to all sorts of things. The one thing that you must embrace as an African spiritualist is nature. When you respect and honor nature, it respects and honors you back. It's through nature that we have rain, lightning, thunder, Mother Earth, a wind, the oceans, the sea, all of them are part of the Arum Sea. That's who we are, because we see nature as part of God's gift, Chineke's gift to humanity. So we don't abuse nature. We don't abuse nature. We don't even, in my community, you don't set fire to the leaves without asking for permission. You don't cut down a limb of a tree without asking for permission. Whether you get the permission or not is irrelevant. It's the fact that you made that gesture that teaches that you honor everything that's part of nature. You don't pollute the waters. Now, all of these things are happening. The pollution in the waters, all of that, it's not part of our culture. Okay, so some of the simplest things that we can do to honor and embrace our culture is those things that we must do that actually save our lives. You know, you do not pollute the water that you drink out of. Okay, you don't not a lot of the problems we're having with climate change comes from us polluting nature. We are part of the problem. If we no longer exist, is because of what we've done, the abuse we have of nature. Do you understand? But we, in our spirituality, we believe, and that's why we have the I don't see are just expressions of nature. Right? Yes, you have a lightning, thunder, you have the waters, you have Mother Earth, you have the ancestors, it goes on and on. But all those are parts of our spirituality that we recognize. Now, the other thing we must get out of is asking for validation. We need anyone to validate us to practice that which is ours. It is our culture. And nobody needs to validate it. It doesn't matter if they like it, who they is, I'm not going to say. You think you know who they are. But the important thing is that you understand you must. It is your responsibility. It's nobody's responsibility to validate your spirituality. That's your job.
Yeah.
That's your responsibility. Stop practicing some of it. What are some of it? When somebody comes to your house, if you're Chiist, you present them with chalk. And before you eat, you break the kola nut. You pour libations. When you get up in the morning, go and set your feet on cold grass, on the grass. Because supposedly it absorbs all the iron in your body that are put there through nature's interaction with your body. There are so many things that are simplistic, but they are so nurturing and so healthy for our spiritual way of life. You know, so a lot of what we talked about, we didn't talk about all of it, but a lot of what we talked about, you don't just, and I'm going to be honest with you, it isn't enough to listen and learn and then walk away. No, if you're going to actually say you learned something, then practice it. That's how it stays. That's how you pass it on to the children. So these elements that we've talked about today, they form the essence of African culture. You know, highlighting the diversity, while at the same time emphasizes the shared values and traditions across continents. What I shared with you today, there are many other people in different continents, particularly African continents, that practice the same thing, but in different ways. Okay, so if you have found a way that works for you, then practice it. Don't talk about it. That is why when people come to my home, I give them the chalk. And if I have kola nut, then I cut the kola nut and present to them. These are welcoming processes that we have in our home. Okay, and we pour libations. Dibia Chedozi, I know you pour libations every day. Dibia, you pour libations. These are how you connect with your culture. Practice those things. Don't talk about it. Be about it. Now, let me read some of the comments that we have here, and then we can just, because we have about 4 more minutes left. Let me see. Let me take from besides day Wong, Akachi was here. Akachi Azubike joined us today. Welcome. Always pleasure to have you. Then Zainab joined us. Akachi, I'll just put down whatever each one of us said they were. Then Zainab joined us from Nigeria, from Abuja, Nigeria. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us, Zainab. Zainab said it was a pleasure to be there. And she agrees that she was lucky. She's lucky to be alive. Yes, anybody who's alive, that's Chineke working. And yes, you have to be grateful. And Akachi says, so great to see you. Yes, indeed, it's been a while. I know you've been busy, and so we're happy to have you back. And JVST was here with us. Thank you, JVST, for joining us. Let's see, and then we have Kimberly Bell Corn. Kimberly, thank you for joining us. and hopefully you will return. She says that there's something that she wrote that I just kind of want to say something about. It said Black Hebrew Israelites. Let me put it here so you can hear it, you see it. Thinking they are Levantine, focus only on the seed of the father. That is anti-African. That's right. Dibia's Chiist, they talked about that. You know, complementarity. We don't just say men and we don't just say women. We don't survive without complementing each other. We need each other. So this is what African spirituality is, and quite frankly, that's why Chineke is Chi, the male energy, and Eke, the female energy, feminine energy. So we believe in complementing one another and working as such. You know, when we say this is a man's job, this is a woman's job. Yes, there are some things that a man cannot do that a woman can do, and there's some things a man can do a woman cannot do. Which know your role, play your role, you know, and give credit where credit is due. Okay, Akachi says the U.S. election, which is true. Oh my God, yes, is exposing everyone and those with anti-complementary views. Yes, if you guys are not following the U.S. Election, you should. It's something to witness. It's something to witness. Well, you go to YouTube. There's so much information there that you can glean from. Thank you for sharing that, Akachi. And then also we have Kimberly says, I don't know how you all feel. However, I feel that Captain Traore is prime example of Pan-Africanism. That's right. See, this is a man who decided, and you know, when other leaders just kind of watched Africa or his country being trampled upon, he decided that enough was enough. He took the mantle, you know, and he's working it. He's teaching the rest of Africans how to stand up for themselves, being in control of their own resources. I really agree with you. We admire him. We admire him. We absolutely do. Let's see what other comments we have here. Akachi says something about being patient with those undecided U.S. voters. Yes, Akachi, you must exercise some patience with them. Quite frankly, you're going to need that. We need that. I have to exercise patience with them. All right. Last but not least, I just want to read this because we're kind of out of time. There's been an Eurasian, I think, wedge placed between us because our African complementarity is our power. Complementarity is our power. That's why they need to keep us assimilating into their way of life, you know, and further us away from ours. That's right. I mean, it's a plan, you know. But you know, you can talk about what people are doing to you, you know, or do something about it. We can keep talking about it, but we have to do something about it. At some point, we have to take responsibility and say enough is enough. We're not going to take this anymore. We're going to have to, you know, change our ways. Well, there's so much more here. Thank you, all of you. There's so many comments here. I can't share all of them, but thank you for your comments. Thank you for joining us. We're really looking forward to having you join us. The next Sunday, we're going to have videos posted in African Women, I beg your pardon, posted in Global Faith Ministries of Chiism. That's going to be on Facebook page. Please look out for Dibia Chedozier's video and Dibia Yudi's video and my video as well, where somebody joined us, JB's. Hello, family. Hello, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm sorry that this program is almost ended, but we hope that you will join us for not this coming Sunday, but the next Sunday. We are going to have Chiism live again, but in between that, we're going to have different videos that we're going to share some thoughts from three of us. All right. Thank you, all of you. Dibia Chedozie, Dibia Yudi, thank you as always for joining us. And I thank all of you for being here, and we look forward to you coming back and joining us. Dibia Chedozie, Dibia Yudi, do you have any final thoughts? Because we're out of time, so that we can end the program for today. Just a quick
Love,
one sentence.
love is the highest religion, and that is what we're here
Yes.
to offer
Yes.
all our listeners
He said,
in Chiism.
yes.
For Yagazie,
Yes.
Iseo. All right.
So, Yagazie, Dibia.
Yeah, let us begin to internalize the virtue of patience, and so that we can then listen to our ancestors and learn the ways of complementarity, and build a strong, vibrant civilization that we once were. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, everyone. We're getting a lot of dalu thank yous from everyone. We love you. We love you. We want to welcome you. Well, let me just share this.
Thank you.
I'll just go through it. Thank you. Yes. All of you are fantastic. Your family. And we are so happy that you joined us. We want you to. And please, next time, bring a friend. You know,
yes.
We always announce when we're going to have, bring a friend. I dare you. Let's see if we can get to 25 people next show. Bring a friend. Don't come just by yourself.
One big happy family.
Yeah, one big happy family. Thank you so much. Thank you, all of you. May God bless you. Everything that you touch today, turn into gold. See you soon.